Party Buff.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Party Buff. We are back with Azrenix, Oscitater, and GoodRootsGames, that's me, to talk about something that maybe you haven't heard us talk about before. We tend to talk about really relaxing things and calming things and happy things because we're a happy bunch of people. But today we're not going to be a happy bunch of people. Today we're going to be those raging people you see all over the internet that get millions of views, but we're not going to do it live for you. We're just going to talk about it because I think that most gamers can relate with the fact that rage just happens. So the first thing we're going to talk about are the games that make us rage. Not necessarily the ones we go to for whenever we're in a frenzy in our real lives, but the ones where for some reason we keep hauling ourselves right on back to it, even though all we do is cuss and scream at the TV. So let's start up with Az up there. So Az, what games just drive you batty?
Well, first off, I think everyone knows any multiplayer game will drive anyone batty. Any team-based game, I mean, I'm usually not one to rage, but there have been moments where when I used to play Overwatch, that game can definitely make you rage when you're just like, what is this Reinhardt doing? What is this guy doing? Why is he using his ultimate? Yeah, it really makes you question the people that play that game and how many brain cells they have. Because let me tell you, the number seems quite low. So that game, I think it's a game really, when it's hitting all the right notes, it's a perfect game. Like when your team is on a synchronization level, like everyone has great synergy. It's like the game is brilliant. But then you get to those teams where it's like, how does this guy even wake up in the morning and tie his shoes without realizing? It's like, so yeah. So that, as you can tell, that game definitely makes me rage. But like I said, I love it all the same. So. That's my answer. Overwatch, any multiplayer FPS game, kind of like Valorant, maybe that would definitely be up there for me.
Yeah, those are tough ones right there. And as a warning to anybody who's a listener or a watcher of this podcast, I'm just going to say this might bring out the cussing in us. So be prepared. Normally we keep it to a couple of F-bombs an episode, but this one we might just let loose. Depends on how excited we get here. So, Aussie, what do you think?
They're all me, so.
Yeah, it's all going to be Aussie.
we all channel it to Aussie.
It's just right over there. That's the problem right there. Okay. Censor everything Aussie says. So, Aussie, what do you think? What's your rage game?
No, I'm pretty much in the exact same boat as Az. It's funny that you brought up Overwatch because I was trying to think of games that really piss me off, and I think any competitive shooter is pretty up there on that list, but like Overwatch, Paladins, team-based stuff like that. So like, you look at something like COD. If you're really, really good at COD, you can usually just like carry a team. Something like Overwatch where it's you need that like team composition and you need people kind of like doing their job, so to speak. It can get really, really frustrating when people are just kind of like dicking around and not doing what they're supposed to, and you have no control over it, right? And I think anything like that is, I would say, kind of heavily skill-based. I think that's the other caveat to it, right? Because if you're just playing something that's multiplayer, that it's like, it's whatever. It's just random chance, like, oh, we lost, no big deal, it happened. But when it's something that like you're just flat out being outplayed and outclassed.
Oh yeah,
that's just demoralizing, right?
So you can do
feels good. And you can blame it on lag or, bugs or whatever the hell you want. But, everybody knows that's like the classic go-to is like, oh, fucking lag. It's terrible. Game's laggy as hell.
Or you start blaming your teammates. One or the other.
Yep. My controller didn't respond.
Yeah.
Or you start blaming your teammates.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I was thinking too. So anybody who knows me knows that I'm typically a pretty calm guy. But I distinctly remember at least 2 or 3 occasions in Overwatch playing with like good friends of mine getting pissed off to like the point of just like yelling at them. And that's basically why I stopped playing Overwatch, because I'm like, I don't want to yell at my friends. I don't want to be an asshole. So,
games that make you hate your friends.
Rage lies.
Well, I give my answer about it on that same level. Also think about the one-player games. Think about your solo games that just, if you have Dark Souls. Yeah, I figured one of you was going to bring up Dark Souls. I was like, somebody's going to bring up Dark Souls for rage purposes. So I'm going to talk about, I absolutely agree. And the second that Az said multiplayer, I was like, oh, yeah, no kidding. Yeah. And as somebody who started with tibia, yes, I blame the rubber banding a lot for a lot of problems. But sometimes it's funny rage, and sometimes it's like, I'm gonna murder you rage. And they're different levels of rage. One time on tibia, one of my friends went hauling off to go chase off one of the monsters that runs away. It throws things at you and then it runs away, right? So she goes hauling off without the tank, without me, the healer. She just goes tearing off, and then we're like, Angel, come back. Angel, come back. And then before we know it, she's screaming across back in our direction, and she goes flying past us, and she's got every ape in that area following her. We're just like, you deserve it. We're not going to aggro this. You deserve it. Like, you can outrun them if you want, but we're not going to save you from this. We told you.
Of the DPS picking up like every mob in the dungeon and being like, oh shit, somebody
every
save me.
time. Multiplayer games will do that.
Then they'll be like, healer, where you at?
Yeah. Like it's my fault.
The tank's fault.
Or the tank. As the tank I played on PWI, as Aussie knows, because that's where we met. How many times, man, did we go into like BH69 or something, and inevitably somebody goes tearing off around, or they say that I'm a bad tank whenever they're in an instance where I know for a fact it's easy for me to die because it's all poison damage. Yeah. And they know
it. The tank, you grab what you're comfortable grabbing, and then somebody's like, we should be grabbing more stuff, and like they take it upon themselves to pull everything in on the tank, and they're like, oh, why do we wipe? And it's like, oh, because you grabbed 6 more things than I could.
Because I had to save your happy butt from dying by pulling all this stuff because you brought it all. I should have just let you take it and run off.
If you're not playing the tank, fuck off.
Yeah, what the hell's your problem, dude? I think that anything multiplayer will do that, but on a solo game, the one that I'm thinking of for solo player was the first time I started recording YouTube videos for video game purposes, pandemic fun. And the one I'm thinking of is called Weighty Yatra. It was free to play on Steam. It's a little indie game, and it's very good. It really is. It's a cute platformer. It's really entertaining, has some interesting puzzles in it, but there was one part I was hoping to finish the game. I couldn't do it. I could not do it because it's just too hard. And you're just cussing and cussing. Now, thankfully, this isn't one where you have to go back and repeat the entire level. Like, it gives you checkpoints, thank gods. But this level in particular was just the same freaking thing. You have to have the reflexes of a cat to do this stupid thing. And I thought, there is no chance. I don't have the skills. I even said on the video, I'm sorry, viewers, I do not have the skills to complete this. A better gamer than me will probably finish this, but it will not be me, and it will not be today. And I had to stop the video. I tried it probably, I put a cutscene in the video that said I tried this probably about 100 times at least, and I just could not get past it. And that's something where it's like, I want to break the keyboard. That's the fury. That's the rage. I kept at it because I wanted to feel the success, but 100 times later, I'm like, this is just not happening. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough for this. And you just have to, nope, I'm done.
Sometimes I find that like if you can't get past a certain part, it helps to just take a break from it and then come back after like a couple of days, and then you end up beating. It's like any problem in your life, like even at my work, sometimes if a problem is stumping me, I just come back to it a couple of days later. All of a sudden, like I know the answer. It's like, whoa. Yeah. All right, thanks, brain.
I hope that would be the case.
I'm stuck on something. Like I've had games that I quit playing because I just get stuck on a portion. And I can't for the life of me figure out how to get past it. And then, go back to it like 2 months later and just no practice, like not up to date on the game at all. Like your muscle memory is gone, and still you just like clear it. And you're like, what the hell is the problem here? Like, what was I doing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I can't remember why it was, or even if it was an issue, but I came back to it several times and realized that no, I still suck. I still suck, and there's just no moving forward in this. And it's not just the certain games where it's like, okay, I'm raging because I didn't do it right the first 10 times. This was literally one of those moments where I said, I am just not good enough as a gamer. I've been gaming my entire life, but because a lot of the market for gamers now have been gaming their entire lives, games have gotten more and more difficult, and they do not pander anymore. You have to up your game, and it's like, oh, you've been playing games since you were able to stand up? Well, here, let's give you a challenge. I didn't ask for a challenge. Back up.
I mean, I'm not ashamed to admit that sometimes I put a game on easy mode when I just want to relax. I would definitely do that. I mean,
oh yeah, I play Fire Emblem on casual.
I mean, hey, sometimes you just gotta, live your life the way you want to instead of, trying to go for a challenge. Like, I mean, if I want to challenge a game, I'll play like a game that challenges me. But if I'm playing like an easy story-based game, put that boy on easy mode and have at it.
Yep. I mean, I don't play Fire Emblem on the normal regular mode. I don't like watching my people die. Heck, even if they do, guys, I am the person, I will shut the game off and restart because the idea of somebody dying is heartbreaking. I'm like, no, won't do it.
That was my whole issue with Fire Emblem is like the permadeath on characters. So yeah.
Ooh, I can never handle permadeath, dude.
Like 45 minutes in a battle, somebody dies, and I'm like, all right, well, it looks like I'm turning the system off, and I'll come back to it tomorrow because I'm too pissed off to do it again right now.
That's why I never like permadeath in games. I just feel like the progress that you spent like the entire time, it just feels all wasted to me.
Yeah. So I played a lot of ARPGs like Path of Exile or Diablo, stuff like that. And it's always amazed me the people who play those games in hardcore mode where it's just permadeath and you've spent like hundreds of hours building up your
I'm just like
permadeath and it's like, oh my god.
I think the permadeath option is for people that have spent like probably like they've already played all the other modes, so the permadeath is like, step up for them. I would hate to think you need permadeath like on the first try. Yeah,
can't do it. So, did you think of any solo player games? I mean, Dark Souls, obviously, that just are your rage?
That's how I relax, man.
That's I know. So I'm the opposite of Aussie there. I don't use Dark Souls to relax. That's my real tensed up game. And like I said, I've only played the first one. I have quite a few friends that have been telling me, my community always keeps telling me, play Dark Souls 3, which I will at some point, I feel like, just because I've been peer pressured into probably doing it. They're not my cup of tea. I played the first Dark Souls. I was definitely more... It was definitely a mean Azrenix, I'd say. More like I was just like, this freaking boss. It was right there. This guy, or like when you get ambushed by a couple of guys, I'm like, why were you there?
Yeah.
Who told you to be in that spot? Why were you waiting for me there? But I definitely, it's a game that if I'm raging and I want to like cool down or like beat somebody up, I think everyone knows this. It would probably be when you go into a single player game, like, Skyrim or Witcher 3, or like, I think the most common example would be Skyrim. And then you turn off, or then you turn on quick save, and you see that meme where the NPC goes, oh boy. So then you're like, all right, here I go killing. And you basically murder the entire village, the entire continent. And then you quick save back to like before you did that. So you're still a nice guy. So, none of that happened. So that'll probably be my my way to steam off, or also the Batman games. The reason why I say the Batman games is because, first of all, the Batman games are very, very good. And second of all, like the combat in those games is very, very satisfying. I mean, you're just beating up a bunch of these guys. And I want to make a point on that. I love the fact that Batman, we all know Batman has this moral code of not killing anybody, right? Like, generally, he doesn't want to kill anybody. But I also love the juxtaposition of him, like, I'm not going to kill anybody, but I'm just going to break their spine over this railing here and basically paralyze them for life. But I'm not going to kill anybody.
I'm not going to kill you. I'm just going to make you wish I did.
Yeah. I'm going to break their bones in like 5 different ways.
I wouldn't end your life, just your livelihood.
Yeah, exactly.
Great way. But like the combat in those games is very visceral. You know what I mean? Like they did a great job with those, and it just feels so satisfying when you go up against a group of like 20, thugs around you, and you're just like, all right, you just take them out one by one. It's so visceral. So that would definitely be my game that if I'm raging, I definitely go to that and let it off a bit, steam off a bit. I'd say
it's aggressive Zen.
Yeah, it's aggressive Zen. Yeah, exactly. Which is also a great way to play Overwatch, is to have an aggressive Zen. There's a character in Overwatch called Zenyatta, so he can be pretty aggressive.
But he can wreck people. Yeah.
Yeah, he can. Yeah.
Reminds me of the video from whenever Team Fortress 2 was releasing all of the Meet the Blah Blah videos, and it was Meet the Pyro. And on the inside, it's like all you see is him like dancing with fairies, and there's rainbows and sparkles and happy music. And then on the outside, what he thinks is like his sparkle gun or something. It's like his actual flamethrower, and people are screaming and dying, and there's body parts flailing everywhere. And just like the pyro sees it as just a happy moment. Like, yay. That's what I feel like whenever I imagine you playing Overwatch, and you're just like, I'm gonna murder people, and it's gonna be great, and it's aggressive Zen.
Yep. I'm a nice person.
What about you, Aussie? What games do you go to whenever you're hitting the rage fan?
I don't know. It's a good question. So I was kind of saying this earlier. I feel like I don't rage too often, but I've never done like the Skyrim thing. You see that all the time. People like turning off autosave and just like rampaging through a Skyrim city. But I think on that side of things, of just going on like a murdering spree, GTA was always the go-to for me. Like when I was younger, like GTA is just such a fun game to just jump into and like cause complete chaos. You just go ape shit, go off the deep end in that game. And I think it's a good outlet in that sense. But for me personally, I think I kind of lean more towards like story-based games, something that's going to take my mind off of it rather than something to like fulfill that rage and like give me an outlet for it. I think I just get into something that'll distract me from it and kind of put me into a better mindset, something that I can dive into and kind of forget about whatever it was I was angry about, which probably isn't the best way to address it, but it's fine.
No, of course, you should always bottle away your feelings, everybody. Just bottle them away, and you should always bottle away your feelings. Yeah,
exactly.
Away, and it comes in handy later. When you want to unleash the rage, it comes in handy.
Yeah.
Mind you, turn it off from the Book of Mormon. Anybody ever heard or seen that Book of Mormon?
From like years of buildup.
Yeah, just turn it off.
Exactly.
Just there's no reason to address it. And on my side, I'd say that raging games, of course, one could say Borderlands, but it's not. My game is not Borderlands. I play Borderlands for other reasons, for cathartic reasons of a different nature, but not whenever I'm raging. My rage game has been for pretty much all of my life and will continue to be Age of Empires 2. That is my rage game, because there is nothing quite as satisfying as putting on the Blue Danube and taking your 30 trebuchets and marching them into somebody's town and just letting them go. And it just feels great. It's just so nice. It's the aggressive zen. And I love doing it to classical music, particularly for some reason the Blue Danube Waltz. And anytime that song comes on, that's what I think of is just like dun da 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 dun trebuchet and like, catapults and just all kinds of stuff. It's the most chaos moment, and it's so satisfying to have that on the same level. It also makes me rage really hard if things are not going my way. So sometimes, like you said, just going on easy mode and just go in there and just murder people and just it's over. And it's such a nice.
Don't take that out of context.
Yes, don't take that out of context. This is the healthy way to do things. And I kind of wanted to drift into this, not segue, but kind of a related topic of that. Once upon a time, back in the 90s particularly, the scourge of the earth, according to every news outlet available, was violent video games. And I think this is whenever the first GTA came out. Now, I was not allowed to play the GTA games, and frankly, I didn't have any interest in them. I do have a couple of friends now that are streaming friends who are asking me to join in on their server on GTA 5, which I thought, why? Is that game not about just beating up grandmothers and killing hookers? I mean, what is there more to this?
Only the good parts.
Yeah, and selling drugs and boosting cars. I mean, is there nothing else to this? And it turns out that on their server, you can do role play and you can do actually wholesome jobs and that kind of thing. I'm like, oh, maybe. Okay.
Yeah, instead of running the grandma over with the car, you help them cross the street,
Right. And I'm like, okay, I'm willing to try this game now. But back in the day, GTA was the big no. I mean, Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, everybody was jumping all over the violent video game bandwagon. And now graphics have increased to such a point where it almost seems real, and you have VR and you have all these other systems. So they've, with everything else going on in the world and the level of chaos, it seems like the violent video game attack has gone downhill in media because it doesn't hold the same place. I feel that if we didn't have so much other stuff going on in the world, the pandemic and, the kinds of attacks going on and everything else, that they would still be on this because of how far video games have come. With that in mind, I would like to ask both of you, and we'll start with Aussie, about violent video games here. Do you feel that, and as gamers, I'm sure we all have a very similar opinion, that the violence in video games has been tempered because of the advance in video games and the kinds of limits people have to put on their games now, or the kind of like the MSRB ratings that they have to really restrict who gets them? Or do you feel like the impressionable nature of video games that they were concerned about, which was not real in the 90s because, one, the graphics were atrocious. So seriously, you expect us to beat up people? Not unless they're polygons. May have actually advanced to this point because the games are so realistic.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. So I remember distinctly what you're talking about with GTA, right? Like, it was just under fire from like every major news outlet of like, this is making children today violent, blah, blah, blah. And I remember different games, actually. this game right here. It's called 13. It's a shooter game for the PS2. It's actually based on a series of French comic books by the same name. It was when cell shading was first a thing, and it's all cell shaded. There's like cutscenes that are made to look like comics. Like, I thought it was a really cool looking game, but it's rated M for mature because there was blood and violence and shooting people. And I imagine that when I definitely was not 18, and I remember a dude at Walmart would not sell it to me. And so then I went and found my mom in the store and walked over there, and she bought it for me because she didn't really care. But I distinctly remember this being like a pretty big thing back in the day when people were like, oh yeah, video games are violent, they're causing violence in people. And then I think over the years there've been, a couple studies and stuff on whether or not there's any correlation there. And I think realistically, with the advancement of video games, I don't want to say video games have gotten more violent, but there's definitely more of an opportunity to have like more graphic video games. I remember playing it was like Dead Space for the first time, right? You're just severing people's limbs and stuff, and there's crazy, I don't even know what to call them, like monsters, space alien guys, meat puppets like coming out of the wall. There's weird shit going on. So I think there's stuff like that where it kind of makes sense. You probably don't want like a 5-year-old playing a super graphic game like that, just like you wouldn't have a 5-year-old going to a super graphic movie. But I think that more so comes down to like parenting and teaching your kid, right? Like, I've seen small kids play GTA. Like, there's probably maybe some cutscenes you don't want them to see, but to hand them a controller and be like, hey, just like mess around. Like, I think as long as you're explaining to someone, hey, this isn't right. It's the same as like a movie, right? Like, if you're introducing your child to movies that have violence, you're going to explain to them, or ideally by then they're knowing what's right, what's wrong. And I think it's the same thing with video games. I mean, it's just a medium like anything else, like a book or TV or what have you, or a movie. It's just a matter of whether or not the person consuming it is in the right state of mind to be able to consume that content.
Agreed. No, really agreed. What do you think, Az?
We all see pretty much hit all the nails on the head there. That was really well explained. I mean, really, I know I've seen those studies too that show there's no correlation between violent video games and violence in real life for the most part. And like Aussie said, as long as you're, understanding the medium, and as long as you're old enough to understand, like, hey, this is just video games, it really doesn't matter. I mean, yeah, I've always loved the fact that you can, before we went from chopping polygons to like actual graphic detail where you can see like the limbs of the arm that you're cutting, which I love. I love a game that has good graphics, and yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I speak for most of us when I say like, just because you kill a bunch of people on Skyrim doesn't mean you go on a murdering spree in real life. You know what I mean? It just means you're just taking off the edge, and it's just like what I said, one of those things where, like I said, I love the advancement in graphics and video games, and I think it's definitely a good thing. As for why, I think gaming has just become a lot more mainstream. Like back then, gaming was like, I guess before even gaming, what was it, like rock and roll used to be the devil's worship, then it was D&D, and then there's always going to be a scapegoat, for something. There's always going to be something that everyone tries to blame, or those pearl clutchers try to blame, I should say. It's not everybody. It's any rational person would know, like, yeah, no, video games don't, rock and roll didn't create a generation of murderers, So there's always going to be some kind of scapegoat. But at the end of the day, like I said, I'm glad that gaming is a lot more mainstream and a lot more accepted. And it's definitely something that I think it's a good outlet to kind of, express your rage in healthy ways, I should say.
No, I absolutely agree. And I think that Aussie brought up a really good point. You need to think about the person who's consuming that media and saying, are they mentally in a place where it's safe to consume that media? And that, I think, was what the news outlets were really grabbing. They were like, it's targeted towards kids. Now, we are of maybe less so with Az, but Aussie and I certainly are of the age now that we were in both. We were in the age whenever it was coming out, like, and I'm going to say it, and I know that one of the viewers or listeners was going to bring it up if I didn't. Mortal Kombat. That was the game of death. GTA had the big attack, but before that, Mortal Kombat, the first one, was like, wow. That was the one where they were censoring it on TV, and you can't let your kids play this game, and don't let them go to the arcade. I mean, it was just like the big thing. is just a huge thing. I had Mortal Kombat 2 when I was a little kid. And yeah, it looked ridiculous. It really did. It had some terrible graphics, but it was obviously you were ripping somebody's spine out, you know. I mean, it was obvious what you were doing.
I've seen the cutscenes.
Yeah,
they've always entertaining.
It was fun though. I mean, it was fun to play. It was entertaining as heck, but it really became kind of a big media. It was the scapegoat, like you said, it's the one that people wanted to go after and really attack and say that this is too violent and this is, you know, it's inspiring rage. And I'm like, no, if anything, it's really diffusing it, because I could be attacking people in real life if I was of any kind of mental capacity to do so, but instead I'm taking it out on a video game, which I think is far safer and far more fair. But the people who said, oh, it's going to make our kids grow up to be murderers, I played Phoenix Wright and I'm not a lawyer. I played Overcooked and I'm not a chef. And I played violent video games and I'm not a murderer. So I'm just saying, games are games. They are something that is a fantasy and it is fun. And the majority of people playing games where they're physically fit enough to jump over fences and come and beat up people are not the ones sitting playing video games for 8 hours a day. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah,
I know I in my physical state
8 hours a day.
Like, only 8? No.
Yeah, those rookie numbers.
You're lowballing it there, Roots. And I think that it's a fantasy thing, and they did the same thing with Looney Tunes, believe it or not. No, they did. They were like, oh, you're showing people, you know, you're showing a cat beating up a mouse with a hammer. So their kids are going to want to beat up mice with hammers. Just tell your kids that it's not okay to use a hammer on their brother. I think that's fair.
Or just tell your kids that cats don't actually use hammers and that they'll just eat the rat or the mouse straight up.
Yeah, I mean, just be honest and be real about it. I feel like for rage for video games, I found myself to be a more balanced individual because of violent video games. I think that was fair.
I've seen the way my cat looks at birds, and I know for a fact my cat isn't thinking about hammering them. That's for sure.
I don't know. You can't read your cat's mind. For all he knows, he's like, "Give me the toolbox, Dad."
Is we need to teach our kids to eat mice raw.
Yes, yeah. None of that cooked stuff there, you know.
That's what it's teaching them.
Yeah.
If I was having a really rough day, I came home, I put on, for some reason, my song of choice was Me and Julio Down by the Schoolyard. I don't know why. And I played a violent video game, and it was my way of doing a release. It wasn't teaching me to be aggressive. It was teaching me to take my aggression out on something that couldn't actually be damaged. And that's the part that was like, rage is okay, viewers and listeners. You can be upset and angry, and that's why we have video games, so you can take that out in the video game. Go beat up people in Overwatch.
I do wonder how that conversation is going to change, though, when you get to VR, though, when you can actually experience it like in that moment, you know, and you actually see those people and like, because, you know, like doing it through a controller, I feel like isn't that bad. You know what I mean? Like if you go through like a murdering spree in a village in Skyrim, you know, it's just a controller.
You're a lot more separated from it.
Yeah, but then when you get to VR, like I'm talking about like advanced VR, kind of like Ready Player One VR, not just like almost, you know, 20, 30 years into the future when we actually hopefully get to that point where we can fully immerse ourselves into that world and you can see the people, the village of, you know, whatever game you're playing. I wonder if that's going to change, you know, I wonder if that I wonder if you're going to feel more bad, you know?
Yeah.
I imagine that, yeah, okay, I'm absolutely going to dig into that one. Let's put on our seer's caps here for a second and say, what do we think? Because Az brings up a great point. What do we think will happen if VR gets to the point where you can see the fear in a character's eyes? I mean, at that point, has the psychology moved from, okay, I'm taking out my rage on a non-real person, or because they're real people being depicted through an avatar, do you now have the urge to take it out on a real person? So, I mean, the seer's caps.
Yeah, I don't think I'll be able to do it. I mean, right now, it's just a bunch of pics. I mean, for the most part, graphics are really nice, you know what I mean? But the characters, really, for the most part, are motionless, and they're the same art figures, you know, for the most part. It's like, you're still separated, like Austin said, you're still kind of separated. Yeah. But like when you get to the point where you can fully immerse yourself and you see the fear in the villager's eyes and the way they react to you, you're like, oh crap. You know, I can't do this.
Am I the baddie?
Yeah. Are we the baddies?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, for me personally, I think, like, you know, as a conjecture, I don't think I'd be able to do it just because, like I said, the graphics Although I can't wait for that to happen. You know, not the murdering speed part, but the part where you can actually be immersed into a world and see the emotions in a character's face, and really, like, I think I've had I know a friend or two that said, if you ever get to that point, they just want to be hooked up to a battery like the Matrix. They want to be hooked up to a battery and basically live their entire lives. Like they don't mind being used as a battery if they can live their entire lives in like in a fantasy world of their choosing, so to speak. So, I mean, I can totally understand that sentiment. You know, I feel like a lot of people just want that. And I know we went a bit off topic here, but you know, I'm just trying to imagine like how cool it would be to visit a world like, you know, like a village in Skyrim and just totally immerse yourself into that world.
Yeah.
So
role playing to an extreme.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I have a pretty limited experience with like current VR. I would say most of the VR stuff I've been in is kind of like more primitive, but like I've been on some that are like a roller coaster, and even that, just being in there, like you almost feel that like drop in your gut as you're going down. You know what I mean? Or I know you actually just played through Hellblade not too long ago as Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice.
Yeah.
I tried the beginning, like I played the intro of that in VR, and it was just a really weird experience. I don't know. Like once you're in those games that are just this really creepy setting, you're like kind of looking around at stuff. Like it feels a lot more tangible. It feels a lot more immersive and like concrete. Like you feel like you're there. So
Yep. And I think games really do a great job of making you feel like you're there. Like I was already scared in the first intro part of Hellblade. Like I was already scared. Yeah, so like I can't imagine if I was in VR
on the screen in front of you, right? So
yeah.
Like, when you're there and you can like physically look around at everything, it's just I don't know, it's weird.
I think that VR is going to make a big difference in the impact on the psychology of video games and the psychology of video game players, because it's not just, I mean, I've played my share of VR games. I enjoy them. I do not play games that scare me. Sorry, Jet. For anybody who knows my stream, Jet's been begging me to play a scary game, and it's not going to happen.
That's how you got me. That's how you got me to play Hellblade.
You can take it out on Az. I'm not going to do it. But it's more for me about, I'm not going to put myself in a situation where I feel that uncomfortable. Games are supposed to be a release for me. And if I play a little bit of anxiety-inducing games or something where I'm immersed in a story like a JRPG, for God's sakes, I play Stardew Valley, and I can't imagine hurting somebody's feelings as one of the NPCs, the little villagers that are pixelated like 64-bit. And I think that inherently people are good, and they don't intend damage to another person. So I think that even with VR, maybe this behavior of human psychology will move forward and say, even with this advance in technology, that it's not going to make me into a bad person just because it's more immersive than it was before. You know, it's not going to turn me into a worser person because it's prettier, because it's more real, and because it looks better. So I'm hoping that that's the case, but we are coming to such a point now where you go to conventions sometimes, not nowadays, of course, but once upon a time, whenever this really started getting going, they have the little like oscillating, you can stand on it and it moves you, and you walk and it moves your character, and you're holding the gun, or like even somebody was doing like a rock climbing thing and it's like a moving wall and it's VR, and then they fell and they screamed even though they were like 3 inches off the ground. They really get involved, like Aussie was saying, like you feel the drop in your gut. That's where I'm kind of like, is the technology going to cause a rage issue in the future, or do we still trust in human psychology enough to realize that it's a fake world and not to be affected by it in the same way as they would in the real world, even taking it back to like a Star Trek Voyager episode where they were in a virtual world, but the fear of dying because it was like their avatars were being murdered by this jokester, and they died in the real world because their heart rates went up so high because of the fear.
I'd be curious to see if people end up with like PTSD or something from something they've experienced in a game. You know what I mean? I
can definitely see that, man.
Psychological effects that might come around.
It can definitely happen. I mean, think about if when you watch a movie, when you watch a scary movie, or you know, it's really like we keep saying, it's separated. You're still watching it through a screen, you know. But then as soon as you're in that world, and you can see those characters up close and physically, or not physically, but virtually touch them, and you can see the emotions or the sound all around you. It's like, holy crap, it's a whole different, like you said, I've seen those videos of people are in a VR thing, and they're like, they're trying to, like, the famous one is like when you're trying to do a tightrope across like the city, you know what I mean, like across these two, like, across the city line, and you're like, and then you actually fall off, and then people actually scream in real life, you know what I mean, just because you're so immersed into it. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to. Yeah, exactly. It becomes your reality. Your brain is really, really good at tricking you. Or I guess the VR is really good at tricking your brain. It's one or the other. So
our brains are so easily influenced by things. And
yeah,
I feel that it would still be a good way to let off rage as long as it doesn't eke into the reality of it. But I know that was the concern from the news outlets years ago, and I don't want to be the next CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, where I'm like, are the future of video games causing the destruction of our children's morals? I don't want to do that, because I don't think it's true. I think people are inherently good. I think that they have control of themselves. But whenever you watch videos about people playing VR games and you realize just how real it feels and looks, and the more the technology advances and the better the graphics become, that's where it's going to be like, how far is too far? And I mean, we gamers everywhere who have played like Final Fantasy VII. We all shed a tear. Okay, we all shed a tear.
No spoilers. I haven't played that.
And if you've played a game where you're just like, you're crying or you're having an emotional reaction to something, and they are on a screen now. Imagine it whenever it's VR and the person looks real and it's in front of you. And I think Aussie's right. This could potentially, and we're not psychics. Okay, we're just a bunch of people who talk about video games and streaming. And I think that it's possible that the attachments could become so real that it causes a PTSD if that character was programmed to die or be part of the story or something like that. And it could actually cause an interesting shift in human psychology from recognizing it's through a television screen and you're holding a controller to this has become my virtual life, but to a new reality, not just like Second Life kind of things where you're just in the computer and you're super involved in it and it becomes you. I mean, I've spent 20 hours straight playing Tibia before, and it's not just about an obsession with a video game, it's about it becoming who you are at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see how technology advances in the next, like, as said, 20 to 30 years, and see where are we going from here, and how does this affect your rage and your zen and your calm, and can it be used for both purposes, safe raging and safe calm. I'm excited to see the progress here. So we jumped a little off topic, but it was so much fun. So to talk about that. That's the fun of a podcast. We never know where we're going. Something new.
Yeah.
We don't know what we're doing.
That's why, as you can tell, as the viewers of this, you can tell we're not railroaded here. We can definitely talk about. It's definitely off script here. We can.
Very much winging it.
Yeah, very much winging it.
We have an idea, but then we come in and we're like, no. Screw the idea. Move on. So let's talk about rage quitting as we come into this new transition here. We briefly touched on it before. We talked about a little bit about rage quitting on solo games, but we talked heavily about multiplayer games, and one of the most frustrating parts of a multiplayer game is the rage quit system, particularly on team games. I've never played Overwatch. I'm going to have to take your word for it, fellas. I've never played that, but I do know on certain other games like Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links and that kind of thing, if a person's losing, they just shut it off. And does it count as a win to you? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes it counts as a disconnect. So let's talk about the frustrations, if we've ever been guilty of that, if we've ever rage quit in a multiplayer or on the solos, and see how it affects you, and if you feel like sportsmanship and teamsmanship is kind of an important thing, just to take the loss with grace. Can we do that as a team? Can we do that as video gamers? Can we just agree that you can lose with grace and be a decent person instead of, shutting off your system and screwing the win from somebody else? So we did talk about Overwatch a little bit. So Az, let's start with you. You did talk about Overwatch. What games do you feel have had that effect on you, or has that happened to you?
I mean, obviously, like in Overwatch and like in a lot of other games like Valorant, like a lot of people will just rage quit. You know what I mean? It's just the nature of the beast. It's that's what just generally people tend to do. I mean, for all intents and purposes, you guys are strangers, and just as generally, what I prefer to play with friends, because at least I know for the most part, my friends aren't going to quit on me. Generally, I do the same. Like in any kind of game, I don't really rage quit. Like I'll probably see it to the end, which is one of the reasons why I love Overwatch, is because those games only last 10 minutes tops. So really, you're just out 10 minutes out of your time, and you can move on to a brand new game with brand new people and so on and so forth. So I generally like those kind of, like, I've never rage quitted on my team because I've been brought up on the values of sportsmanship and, always being there for your team in any capacity. Like I play a lot of basketball. So, I mean, to me, I correlated with like in-game sport, like a real life sports, I should say, where like, you wouldn't rage quit on your team in basketball. You know what I mean? You'd stay there to the very end and you lose with grace. And that's why I've always found the idea of rage quitting in video games to always be kind of weird, because it just feels like it would be akin to me playing basketball. And if my team is losing, I just walk off the court. Like who does that? You would never see anyone do that, because it's like, what? Like either you always keep trying to the final bucket or the final time, clock, and then you basically lose, and then you move on. So yeah, that's what I've always found weird about video games. That you just walk away, and it's just like, what?
Yeah. Why did you do that? Right. Just lose with grace.
Exactly.
What about you, Aussie? Any multiplayer games where you've seen this happen?
Yeah. Before you even mentioned Overwatch, that was the first thing that came to mind for me. But I would say I'm 100% in the boat with Az. Like, I think good sportsmanship and having some integrity. That's usually kind of the route I try to go. I definitely do not rage quit in multiplayer games. I always think whether it's, if you're playing and somebody rage quits from your own team, that obviously feels bad, and you're just like, oh well, shit, that sucks. We're down a person.
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
And even if it's the enemy team, you almost, even if you still can get a win, because I know Overwatch wouldn't end the game or anything if people start rage quitting. So then you're, fighting a team that's down a man or two, and you're like, sorry, dude, that sucks. Like, it doesn't feel good to be on either side, winning or losing.
Yep.
And I think in Overwatch, I remember there was a weird mechanic where if you played the competitive games, if you were like far enough into the match and somebody rage quit, it wouldn't, like, in the match, you would still go on and it would count as like a loss for your team, or you would end up, it would count as a loss, and it would like mess up your competitive ranking. It's like, okay, so even if you were winning, and somebody dropped out or whatever,
and then you end up losing the match.
Weird system where you'd kind of just get screwed over by it. But I've always been pretty strictly against rage quitting. And I mean, going back to one of the first games that I can ever remember playing on PC is actually a game called Gunbound, which I don't know how many people are gonna remember it, but it's kind of similar to like Worms.
Oh yeah, I loved Worms.
I don't know. It's like a little 2D, like, you have wind direction and wind strength and all that, and you're lobbing shots back and forth at the enemy team. Sometimes you hit your own team, it happens. It's a very, very simplistic game, but like even back as far as that, people would just rage quit, right? As soon as you're about to like kill somebody, they'd just exit the game so that you don't get the points for it. And it's like, oh, all right, dude, like, you just feel robbed almost. So I think, there's never a situation, I think, where rage quitting, it feels good for either team. I mean, I think it's a very selfish thing. It's just somebody not being able to deal with the fact that they might be losing will bail out, And I actually, there was a team of people that I played Overwatch with for a while. And I remember one guy, like if we went up against a team and we lost against them, even if it was a close round, and then like we rematch made and got put against the same team, he would just be like, I don't want to play these guys again. And he would like pull the entire team out. And I'm like, really, dude? Like, it's like Az said, it's 10 minutes of your time. It's not a big deal. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that for me, on mine, if I ever rage quit as a kid and you are watching this now and you knew me as Yane or Artaxiad or any of my other names, I'm so sorry. It's possible I did rage quit as a kid, but more often than not in multiplayer games, if it was a team thing, I was the exact opposite. I went charging back in, Leroy Jenkins, no armor, no nothing, and just going to help my team, so help me God, I'm gonna be cannon fodder. I was the same kid in dodgeball. I mean, I was the same kid who was just like, I suck at this game, but you know what I am? A meat shield. And I would just put myself right in the front line and let people just beat up on me. So I think that for the most part, it wasn't really about quitting. It was about recognizing my loss and taking it as damaging as I possibly could. If you're gonna hurt my team, you're gonna have to go through my squishy self first. And I did it all the time. And people said, no, Yane, stay back. I was like, no, and I had to go forward, just stop people from charging in. It's me or nobody, and that was always my place. And I was probably a bigger detriment to my team than that and anything, because they're trying to protect me because I'm soft and squishy, and I'm like, no, I'm vulnerable, so let them attack me first. And it's just the slime of the team. That's always how I was. But if I ever rage quit and you are watching this now, I'm so sorry that I did that to you. I was a kid and I was foolish. But as an adult, I try not to do that. I think that I don't like the dynamic behind rage quitting. Just like y'all, it's like, just lose with grace. Please, just finish the game. And even people who they go up against you, like Aussie said, and then they realize it's you, they're just like, no, I'm just gonna quit. Okay, well, you realize you're in a losing situation, so I can't blame you, because why would you put yourself in a losing situation? But at the same time, that is kind of annoying, because now I have to rematch with somebody. But fine, if you're gonna go up against me and realize that it's gonna hurt, then whatever, I get that.
I've had so many situations in those kind of like competitive multiplayer games too, where you come back from like the brink, right? And those are like the best games to me. It's where everything seems lost, and then you turn it around and you're like, oh my God, that was an amazing game. Like we just kicked ass. That was fantastic. I never thought it was going to turn out like that. So the fact that people have those games where you might not even be losing by much, or even if you're ahead and people are just like, yeah, I'm leaving. It's like,
why don't you just give yourself a chance?
Yeah, I'd rather take the chance, right? I'd rather put the effort in to try to turn it around and hope for the best. If you get your ass kicked, at least you tried at it, right? But I'd rather make that attempt than just...
I've watched BattleBots. In fact, I just finished the finales recently. I've watched the 22 seed beat a 2 seed. So there is no reason to think that you can't win just because you feel disadvantaged. So just try your best to do that. And I know that for solo games, I've rage quit solo games. That hurts nobody but me. I've rage quit solo games. I'm not even gonna hide it.
A lot of people have.
Yeah.
But as long as I'm not hurting somebody else with it, I'm okay with it. It's like, fine, I'll hurt my own pride, but I'm not hurting somebody else because of my decision to do that.
I think I'm in that same boat. Yeah, I'll definitely step away from a solo game if I'm kicked at it. But like if other people are involved, I'm definitely not going to rage quit.
Yep.
Just be nice. Be nice. Be pleasant with people. That's all we ask. And I know we just pulled a little bit of a joke on you with the transition that I was going to have us rage quit Party Buff as a sign of our rage, but no, we would never rage quit you, our viewers. We love you so very much. We're so happy for our listeners, our viewers. And as a reminder, we are still looking for sponsors. So if you are interested in having some advertising time on the Party Buff podcast, or if you know of a company or a product that we would be interested in trying out and proud to promote, please reach out to me at partybuffpodcast@gmail.com. That's all one word, partybuffpodcast@gmail.com. And don't worry, viewers, we're not going to leave you anytime soon. We cannot quit you. We love you very, very much. Thanks again for coming to another Party Buff, and we're going to see you next time. Bye.
Later, folks.
See ya.
Party Buff.